Good morning, everyone. This is Anil from Live, Breathe, Believe. I am blessed to be joined by two close friends, confidants, coaches, Fredrik Samanta and Indira Kennedy. Good morning.
Morning.
Hi.
So, oh no, it's a pleasure to have you guys here. So let me tee this off with, we have been speaking, the three of us, and we decided conversations I've had with Fred in nearly the last year, same with Indira, we've covered various topics. They've all centered around leadership, self-growth, personal development, personal insight. I think that it's very brave what Indira and Fred are doing in their own right with their coachees, with myself, sharing ideas. I'm just really excited. Fred is based in Zurich. Indira is based here with me here in London, and they're on their own respective journeys. And folks have heard topics between Fred and I around ego, around procrastination, around the architecture of apology. I've had multiple conversations with Indira on self-mastery, on her 8 elements. We're currently doing a weekly transformation series there. So there's a lot of content, a lot of thought that both of these amazing individuals have that I want to be sure you can have the opportunity to hear, to even exchange and provide your ideas. So in the future, we're planning to bring a bit more of a, let's say, a group together, but this is a starting point for us. So I'm really excited. So again, Fred, Indira, thanks for joining. I'm just going to kind of hand off and go, hey, Indira, maybe share your initial thoughts and then pass it to Fred, and we can kind of get rolling from there.
Okay, so where to start? Initial thoughts are really about conscious leadership, and I guess really what does that truly mean? My business is called Conscious Leadership Australia, even though I live in London now. What you and I have really been talking about over the time has been lots of different ways to become more conscious, become more self-aware, become more aware of how we are with others, and more aware of the impact that we're having and could have in a really positive way on the planet, not only for humanity, but for the whole of the planet. So I suppose that's really the 3 layers that I work at, the 3 ripples, if you like. And I found that when people are really focused on the global impact, that's all well and good, but it might not be getting reflected back into the workplace or the people around them in the way that they treat those, relate to the people around them, and usually not doing a whole heap of work on themselves. So it's all getting projected out. And the work that you and I are doing, and I'm yet to get to know even more about Fred, but I'm assuming that really the core of this is, who am I? And who do I want to become? Who am I becoming? And we don't always know the answer to that, but we can have a lot of choice around that. So I think that frames up kind of the foundation of what I believe we're doing.
Go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful starting point. It just makes me think that it's true, this doing work on ourselves is very important, and it's a very elusive part. We don't really see ourselves. We don't see how others see us. And many people have great ambitions and they want to change the world. And I think that starts with changing yourself. It's the thing we should be most in control of or have the closest relationship with, and then the circles kind of go out from there in terms of the people we have some responsibility for and so on. So and I think that's also a kind of recurring spiritual idea of these things being both within and without, and there's a kind of reflection there. And so I think comes down to those elements of some personal mastery and becoming, as Indira said, and then also it translating to conscious leadership and out into the world.
No, I totally agree. I think, a couple common themes there in terms of it's about the self, right? And something, Indira, we speak about is the capital S. And it's around, conscious leadership, not only to lead yourself, but to lead others. And on top of that, it's around how, with everything going on in the world, with various environmental factors, external factors, how do you find that balance between how they influence you versus how do you find yourself within to influence back. And I think that these are some of the various conversations that we've been having over the last nearly 12 months. And so I thought for today, just to kind of get us rolling, one of the topics that we discussed was around kind of what brought you guys here. What are some of the ideas, some of the principles that you both believe in? Because you wouldn't be doing what you were doing unless you were incredibly passionate about it. You live and breathe it yourself. And I think some of those examples might come through as we go. But, we've talked about desire, happiness, leadership, and everything in between. Maybe what I would ask is just to kind of maybe pass it back to Fred and then to Indira, just kind of what brought you on this path? What brought you on this journey that you've been on, that's allowing you to share and improve the lives of others around you?
The short version is that at one point in my life, I discovered a side to myself that I hadn't been aware of before. And it's a bit like as a child discovering sexuality, that you realize at some point being a sexual being and having sexual desire and all that entails. Something kind of analogous happened on the spiritual side, that I discovered there was a side to me that I hadn't seen before. And that kicked off the whole process of figuring out, well, what is that? What does that mean? And seeing a lot of things from a new perspective. Again, like with the just as a comparison, with sexuality, we see children do sexual things and they don't quite understand what they're doing. And as grown-ups, we do. And the spiritual thing is similar in that once that side opens up, it made me see a lot of human behavior in a new way, in terms of a lot of searching and a lot of figuring out and coming to terms with desire, search for meaning, and these kind of things have a clear spiritual component. That was the start of my journey, and coaching became the professional expression of that.
Brilliant. Indira, go for it.
Thinking about this beforehand, I think my awareness of myself started very, very early on, in that I felt quite different from a lot of other kids. I had an inner awareness and I loved my own company. So in some ways I was a bit shy, but I also loved, I guess, what we would call excellence these days. I loved knowing and learning and getting really good at things and getting 10 out of 10 and a gold star and, the elephant stamp, all those things. But I was really encouraged at home, but there was an inner drive for that. And I really loved getting it right, because in those days, learning was about getting it right. But I also had a sense of there being something even more all the time. And I wanted to know about the world, and I wanted to go beyond anything that was just more immediately around me. And I'm thinking too, I came across books where there would be things about India and even mythology and so forth. And I was really drawn to the exotic, and I'm talking like 12, 13. And the other aspect of it was creativity. Like, always been very creative, loved to paint. Fortunately, had a mum who would not let us be bored. It was, well, go do something then. So we always had a lot of craft available, or get on the bike and go out into the fields, into the paddocks, and just lie in the grass and look up at the sky and the clouds, like that ability to be with myself. I grew up in the country, so I didn't have the impact of the city and all that high stimulation until I went to university. And then I was in Melbourne in Australia for that. But I think what brought me then to coaching and to a greater awareness was that when I went into educating as a teacher and doing drama and dance, I was I was in these altered states a lot of the time in order to create a choreography. And I learned that there was something within me that could keep coming out with these amazing ideas and brilliant, sort of beautiful ways of seeing and being. So my way of seeing changed, and my way of seeing the world changed. And it got to a point where it was really when I was separating from my ex-husband that was truly a spiritual crisis for me. Apart from what was going on in the marriage, there was a deep need for greater meaning and understanding I needed something more. I needed a philosophy. So can I share the time when that happened?
Please. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I was on my way home from work. I'd started part-time work, and after having the children, and got to the traffic lights close to home, peak hour, and I was sitting at the traffic lights realizing I wasn't happy. And I looked across, and there was a Rosicrucian church on one corner. There was a Church of England on the other corner. There was a Uniting Church on the other corner, and a house on the other corner. And I looked around like, well, I've kind of got a choice about this, you know. And I was looking at it and I thought, and I was actually reading Shirley MacLaine's books at the time, the great actress, and she had written a lot about her own quite psychic experiences, her own spiritual path. And it was really revving me up, all these things. It was like, I know there's something that's hidden from me. I know it's there, but I can't touch it. I can't get to it. And it was making me very unhappy. So that was the kind of spiritual calling, if you like, that was happening at the time. So I looked at these three churches and I thought, well, I need something, but it's not a religion. It won't be a religion. And within a very short space of time, I was actually introduced to yoga. And I decided I would get involved, because I thought, if I'm going to separate, I need a way of handling being on my own as a single mum with a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. And I was only in my early 30s anyway. So I thought, well, I'll have to get back into meditation. I'll need to find ways to really support myself and be the best I can be. So the theme here is being the best I can be. I still wanted to be the best mother I could be. I wanted to be the best wife I could be, and that wasn't happening. So I wanted to be the best for me, and I knew I needed guidance on that. I needed a meaningful path for myself. And that was really what then took me into coaching, was wanting to help others have the same, discover the same. It's how do you find that incredible strength and all that beauty that can lie within to then live a better life.
Indira, thank you. It's interesting when you speak to someone as long as you do, and you don't know some of these, let's say, the roots, the origins of why you came about doing what you do. And again, just mad respect. So thank you for sharing that with us. I want to delve a bit further into something that each of you have said. And I think, as you said, like being the best I can be, and the mix of spirituality. And I think maybe I could be mistaken, but I think sometimes spirituality is misunderstood. Some people see spirituality as religion, and some may not. Some may. Can you guys maybe share with me your thoughts, your understanding of spirituality, and how someone like myself, who may not be as ingrained in or as clear on it, could start to understand it and appreciate it better?
Do you want to go first, Fred? That's a big question.
Yeah. So I think it's something about the immaterial side of life, that there are certain things that are not very easy to see and measure that go on in our bodies and in our lives and in the world, that it's possible to become more attuned to. And that can be, for example, when I was younger, I was not very attuned to this at all. And I had a more scientific approach, and I like to measure things, and seeing was believing, and if I couldn't see it, I felt obliged not to believe it. And then, for example, just becoming more attuned to the energy between two people, to sit with someone and say like, well, what's going on right now? How do we feel about this? Is there what does trust feel like? What different types of attraction feel like? Um, how how does my energy change during the day? You know, based on what? For example, we have all sorts of relationships with food, and we say that that's what we need for energy. But then it becomes clear that food is just one of the forms of energy. And if you are, my usual example, I was very excited about going to Australia a few years ago. And if you're getting ready, if you're going to Australia, you have no problem waking up in the morning. No one has ever missed their flight to Australia, because you wake up, you know it's that day, you're ready to go. And then you don't need to have breakfast, you know, you just go. Or similarly, falling in love. When you fall in love, you eat less. And so then no one can tell me that, well, you should have a snack now. No, I don't need a snack. I have some other source of energy that's an excitement about going to Australia, or falling in love with a person, or, you know, even enjoying my work, or being in love with life itself. Then you see that there is another immaterial form of energy. And I think that's like an entry point that I think a lot of people can relate to, hopefully.
Love it. I think the trip to Australia sounds brilliant right now. If only we could.
Making me a bit homesick, actually.
I know. I was just gonna say, like, Indira, you're
5.5 years.
striking a chord there, mate. You know, Indira, what are your thoughts?
I think that's so beautifully expressed, Fred. Because yes, it is about discovering there is another energy at play here. There's something else that is undeniable. I mean, we only have to look at the cosmos to know that, don't we? So I think we get a bit forgetful, if you like, to be kind, about what we think is all within our control and all within our own ability to have the life that we desire. And then we forget that actually we're kind of part of something so massive. And science keeps showing us that. So we even have a dilemma with science. We think that science it doesn't exist unless science says so. And science absolutely knows that it's about the not knowing. And a lot of the time it is theory that they're trying to prove. And I suppose that's really how I treat my life in a while. It's just a theory I'm trying to prove. But when you talked about the inner and the outer, that leads to, there are universal laws, there are energetic laws, and we're using them all the time, and they impact on us all the time. So the way that I guess the way that I've decided to live and want to live, that I feel that's the way I need and is right for me to live, is with an understanding that I do create my world, that I do create a lot of what I experience. And I have a lot of choices about that. Because it is an energetic thing, and we feel it. We know we want that piece of clothing versus that. We want that food versus that. And the purest in me wants the purest energy as well. So, and I also think when you talk about relationships and how we relate and how we feed ourselves, nourish ourselves in so many ways, was when I did get involved with the practices of yoga, it did sustain me. I did get the energy I was looking for and imagined I would need. And I didn't want to be worn out, unable to really fulfill my own potential while I was raising children. I didn't want to put it's a tetrahedron of life, you know, like I didn't see any reason why anything else should go on hold. And I wasn't being super mum. I just had a very strong understanding that I am a very complex being and I want a lot out of life. And I wanted love and beauty and a very uplifting, energizing life. I'm an enthusiastic person, right? And I wanted that for my kids. And thankfully that's in their nature as well. You know, they are two really enthusiastic women. So why would we not want to generate that? You know, it's playing in the end. It's being playful as well. So spirituality for me has really been a way to tap into that incredible source. And I've learned over time, and I still find myself falling into an old way of thinking about it, is that this is not a punitive God. When I get it wrong, I'm not going to go to hell. You know, this is not my way of thinking. And what I choose to believe really is that I am fully supported and I am meant to be here and I am meant to be doing something great. And I will have all of the means available to me if I tap into that. You know, this is unconditional love at its greatest. And then I need to learn to live that myself.
You know, I find really powerful about that is just, I mean, we talk about these words like spirituality, discovery, nourishment, you know, how energy is created, how it's shared amongst people, between people. And I want to go maybe just a layer deeper. And in there, something we've spoken about in the past is, you know, I know your affinity to understanding the science as well of the mind, much as the spirit. Maybe you both can kind of just share a bit of how have you found that mix of science and spirituality on your journey to kind of really understand, you know, the energy you create, the energy you share, and the way you really do understand further who you are and who you're becoming and where you're going?
Sorry, I got distracted by the window cleaner then. I could hear something right beside me.
Okay.
Just literally cleaning my window. Not sure what that really means right now. However, I'm grateful.
We're cleaning, you know, it's like we're cleaning life. No,
it is.
Yeah, clarity.
See clearly. We're going to see clearly.
Seeing clearly now. Don't get me wrong.
Exactly.
I'm breaking a tune here shortly. You know, I can see.
So with the science, that really comes back to studying psychology at university. I had a psychology major and a counselling methodology. So I was able to. Probably a good way to think about it is I did a year at university, classic university style learning, and it did not suit me in the slightest. And we were learning Pavlov's dogs and mice and the classic clinical psychology, I guess. What I chose to do, and I also did a year of philosophy. And what I chose to do was switch over to teachers' college and continued with the psychology, but was lucky enough to then be taught a humanistic approach to psychology. So that was so much more about who we are, how we live, how we relate. In a sense, it brought the heart into the science of it, if you like. And so that really set me up for understanding more about the mind. And I was fascinated, I still am. It's been a lifelong study as the mind for me, as what I now see and coming to understand even more so in the last 12 months is really how the mind is really the interface between our world, our living world, and consciousness and what's going on in all those ways, as Fred was saying, you know, that we don't really see, we're not aware of until one day something happens and we think, oh, wow, maybe there's more to this and I'm being shown there's a window opening up to this. But I've been also really aware that because I absolutely wanted people to know they're great and there's this incredible power within us, that in a culture that has really revered left brain thinking, I needed to go to something to help bridge that gap. So I was interested enough to want to learn the science of the mind, essentially. And that's why, and then neuroscience came forward. And I was like, oh, thank goodness, because there's a really amazing way, and a lot of it's built around quantum physics and so forth as well, to say there is more, and science is showing that and proving it. Wisdom traditions knew it 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, if not more. Now we can bring this together and make it something really powerful. So that's a definite strategy for me, as well as something but I don't want to get caught in the mind, because I'm not my mind. I know I'm not my brain, and I know I'm not my mind.
Very cool. So yeah, this made me think of, starting with science, we have I do believe that we have a belief in science. We believe in that system. We believe that it will in the future deliver good results for us. And I think the evidence for that is debatable. One interesting example is the placebo effect, for example, where I think medical science shows a surprising lack of interest in the placebo effect. And they almost see it as some small curiosity, like you have the whole body of knowledge of science, and then at the end, in one corner, there's this little curiosity called the placebo effect. But when we see the mind's ability to change a person's ability to change their own circumstances, to let go of something, or to create something, and that this has also, I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't have scientific explanations in terms of hormones and neural pathways and so on, that we are beginning to understand. But sometimes the best way to understand it is just intuitively and through practice. So, for example, I think we all agree that some kind of gratitude practice is very powerful. Taking a couple of minutes every day to outline things we're grateful for and to go through that. And I notice it just changes my mood. It's like magic. It's the best 2 minutes anyone could spend. And I don't really, explaining that in scientific terms is not the most important thing to me. I'm sure some people are doing it. You do some brain scans and you do big studies with 100 meditators and so on, and you find something out. But with a spiritual lens, the answer is like, well, just try it out for yourself and introspect or become aware of how it makes you feel. And then you just do it and you say, yeah, it works. This adds something to my life. Now this is part of my spiritual toolkit, and I can change the way I feel. I can change the way I view the world. And that's incredibly powerful. And, as Indira was saying, this has been going on for thousands of years, and science is now catching up. So that's nice.
At last.
Yeah.
Indira, what do you think?
Life, which is really lovely, actually.
And I was just saying, Indira, what are your thoughts on that? Because what both of you said there, like really, I can relate to, right? On one side, there's the study, there's the science, there's the understanding, something that maybe I need to read in a book in order to kind of feel confident that, yes, what I'm reading is true, and how my neurons fire, hormones. But then the spirituality aspect, when I do practice something super simple as gratefulness, when I do practice something just more humanistic, more me, and I have conversations with yourselves on it, I do feel that change. Rather than storing knowledge, I'm feeling something that I can then kind of compare with my knowledge. So just, Indira, kind of from your side, in terms of how have you seen that intersection then between what Fred's kind of mentioned of that feeling versus that science, and how maybe it's come across to you in again back on your journey to relay the two.
Yeah, I think we're getting to the crux of it, really, in terms of our 21st century dilemma, as in we can tend to not believe it unless it can be explained by science. I think for me, and particularly in my coaching, there's a lot of great models that can be formed out of that knowledge. And it's not necessarily that psychology presents those models, but I learn a lot from speaking to other counselors, psychiatrists, therapists around what they use. Fascinating to me is when I'm closer to them now in terms of their process, it's actually usually a coaching process that they're using anyway in the way they approach it. There's not a lot of difference now between the way a psychologist and a counselor will work with you and having a coach. But the understanding behind it, the mental framework behind it, schema is probably a little different, if not a lot different. But I was thinking that free will comes into this. And so I guess, let's not just say psychology, but let's say science generally could assume or could imply that there is no free will in this. And this is also what I get a bit caught up in with people who are really into neuro-linguistic programming. And I think it's an amazing tool, but the heart goes missing when you think, all I need to do is change my brain. All I need to do is rewire my brain, reframe the way I'm looking at this so I rewire my brain. And we have free will in that, because that's implying that we can change our brains. So let's think about that one. And now we know that when we change our brains, we can change our DNA as well. And that's scientifically proven too. That's absolutely scientifically proven. So we've got this incredible power to work on ourselves, even at the level of DNA. Mm. And I find that extraordinary. So the responsibility that we have then comes back to, well, what choices am I going to make? Because I actually have free will in this as well. I can go into play with all of those principles that actually allows me to create a neural pathway in my brain or dissolve one. And we actually have scans of that happening. And we have processes that I can teach that are really simple 4-step processes to do that, right? It's just amazing. But I was thinking about it, I was having a chuckle when you're talking, Fred, because I remember once when I was working in a non-profit organisation, and I was working in fundraising and financing the organisation, but I was talking to the psychologist one day, and I shared, it was very new years in yoga, and I shared with her a meditation experience, and she said to me, "Oh, you were just having a psychotic episode." And it's hysterical. Yeah. And so at the time I was like, okay, no point in talking to her because she just does not get it at all. Yeah. And so coming back to that knowing, there is a knowing beyond the mind. And I think that's what you're alluding to, Fred, is when we put ourselves into practices like gratitude, meditation, all of the 8 elements that we're talking about at the moment, going into what I call attunement, which is really attuning with the guidance and the messages and the energy that's coming to us from a whole other level, that is also at play here. And I absolutely believe that and know it. Then we can go into conscious cooperation with that. And that is our free will. It becomes conscious cooperation. It's not just being done to us and we're living like robots that something else is programming. But my own experience, and over time, particularly I think because of these practices of yoga, has been to allow me to have those inner experiences. And, that goes back to knowing as a child that there was more, that the creativity, there was something else produced from within me. Something was producing through me. And I love that, that gives me a very rich inner life. And no one can take that from me. I would not let anyone take that from me. That is for me. My own little secret smile about that one.
That's fair. Fred, your thoughts?
Yeah, lots of thoughts, lots of interesting things there. Just the first thing that comes to mind is with this kind of calling something a psychotic episode. You know, I think it's very unfortunate when scientists are so smug, you know, that scientists know that knowledge is being updated and we find out more all the time, but then it's this illusion that now we're at the end point, and it creates an overconfidence in the state of knowledge as it is. And when you find out, for example, like I'm not exactly sure about the details of this, but it seems like everything that's called a syndrome, we don't quite know what it is. So we call things something like infant death syndrome or irritable bowel syndrome. And then when you ask people about it, they say like, yeah, we don't know exactly what's going on. So it's like syndrome is like you, and it gives you creating a name and an abbreviation for something. It makes it seem so certain, right? You say, oh, that's what it was. We have this urge to be certain about something. And then when you start poking, it's like, well, we don't actually know much about the causes and circumstances, but it feels good to have this kind of name for it in the database. And I think the same is true for the experience we have, consciousness and free will, and we can try to address these things in a very scientific way, but just to try to find out for oneself what's going on. Like, can you test your free will? Could you do anything today? And what does that mean? What about things you're not aware of? What about things that are not in awareness? And I think that's a great argument for the power of curiosity, that curiosity is a drive that's very innate to us, that makes us go to new places and includes new things in our broader consciousness or brings things into awareness that creates options. We're curious about something, we find out something new, and then that becomes one of the things that we can then do or experience. And the same is true for consciousness, which is kind of related, that uh, we are having a direct experience right now through our senses, and suddenly we become aware of something that wasn't there before, and we directly make interpretations. If an airplane is passing by, we assume that it's far away and that it's an airplane. And then we find out that there was actually a speaker standing next to us. And the experience was the same. The direct experience was the same. But our interpretation of where that sound was coming from and where the sound was in an analytical way had to change. And science, as far as I'm aware, still hasn't explained quite how this machinery works. I think it's the brain that does it, and it's somehow creating this projection we talked a little bit about before, this direct experience through our senses and through some inner energetic workings that is, maybe it's a bit like a cinema or a theater. There is this interplay with what's going on outside and inside. I think it's quite like intuitive. Again, with practices, it's possible to push the boundaries of it and to explore it. For me to close my eyes and say, okay, what am I feeling right now? What's going on right now? What would this be like if I was a baby or an alien? What would I think then? What would be going through this space? And I think that approach to experiencing what I'm experiencing right now is this science with an N of one. It's my personal exploration. It is evidence based, but you cannot get 1,000 people in a room and fill out a survey and come up with a better answer than what I'm coming up with for myself using my direct experience.
See, what I find fascinating about all of that, because again, trying to parcel through what Indira you've just shared and Fred what you just shared, it's like if I look at it from my perspective, you're right. If I tell somebody I meditated, and by meditating I felt calm, or I had a smile across my face, or I felt a tingle, I felt, and as a result of doing that, I feel blank. exactly like you said, Indira, they might say like, but you're just having like a funny episode in your mind, right? There's a cynical, I don't know why, I just feel like there's a cynical view from people. But if you say, oh, I read in an encyclopedia, or I read a study that dot, 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 and as long as you're interpreting it or relaying it correctly, oh yeah, that sounds brilliant. That makes total sense. And you almost find that like, even when we set up this conversation, I said to you guys, hey, I'd love to find a way for what you guys are thinking and sharing to be tangible, digestible for the listeners. And it's almost like, what I don't want to do is I don't want to go, hey, but guys, just an FY asterisk, this conversation can get a bit new age and a bit foo-foo, because it's not. At the end of the day, this is the world we live in, and these are the ideas that are kind of circulating inside and outside. And so I just, maybe you guys can share from your experience when you've spoken to your coachees or you've spoken to others, maybe just continue to maybe share your experiences on how you've managed to help people understand, or at least maybe open their eyes to the possibility of some of these existing ideas, or some of these ideas that you're trying to have them open up to or to consider. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I have one that I'm quite sure that Indra and I talked about it and we agree on it, but I'll of course let her comment. I was very happy when I started my coaching training, and it said something like, coaching is based on a belief that the client is whole and resourceful. And I really like that, it's a theory or an idea that comes back in terms of like, we want to empower the people that we coach. We don't want to give them too much advice and tell them what to do, because that takes away some of their agency. And if you believe that someone is whole and resourceful, why would you want to do that? And I think it goes a little bit further, that perhaps we believe that people are divine, even not just whole and resourceful, not just enough, but even divine. And I think that's something I don't tell anyone. I just hope that it comes across. It becomes clear that I believe in them in a very fundamental way. And that for me is one of the starting points, or one of the bases of then the coaching and the conversation that happens on top of that.
To sort of sit and feel it for a moment, and for those who are going to be watching and listening, to just sit with Fred for a second. That's really beautiful. In my book, that's really beautiful what you're saying. And I think these are concepts, if you like, because we still don't really know. Can we ever really know? And I question myself at times, like, well, I find my truth, and I choose to believe this because it works for me. And I have had enough experiences myself that when I stop and try to get my mind around what's happened, what have I learned from this, what was that, and how will I use this in my life? That's really the process for, I guess it is for coaching, as well as making life a practice, like to learn how to live. Then we get into reflecting and contemplating and journaling, and we're going to move into that in the next 4 elements. Actually, this is why we do all this, is to, and I want to move quite quickly. Actually, I don't want to feel like I wasted the time I've been given on this earth. So I don't actually want to. The thing that occurred to me from what Fred was saying too is that I think we tend to think too linearly about life, and therapy can tend to lead us. Even listening to Ken Wilber just this week, who's a brilliant mind on all of this, there was still a need to put things into levels. There's a need to always have a progression that we go through. And in a way that kind of eliminates the possibilities for many. If you're stuck back at stage 2 when there's 6 more to go, or whatever. And I think therapy can make us believe that we've got to unpack everything that we ever went through. We have to somehow deal with all the stuff that got in the way. And what I've discovered through doing these practices is that if there's some kind of awakening, an aha moment in what we're discussing, or and it will come through meditation quite frequently as well. When I get out of the mind, I go, actually, the mind gets out of the way, other answers will come, other forms of information and wisdom come that I can't manufacture. I just need to put myself there. So meditation for me is a way of actually letting go. And a lot of what we're talking about is really about our need for control. So we need the science to help us feel in control. And for me, I love going beyond being in control. But I also learned that I needed to get control over that. That's the conscious cooperation part, right? It's not about disappearing, dissolving. I'm living in a material world and I want to do that beautifully. I want to choose to do that at the best, to be true to my values, what I appreciate, if you like. So with coaching, long story short, is that I really come from that place with the coaching too, is I do believe in the greatness of each one's power. I do believe there's a power with a capital P, if you like, that sits within all of us. And I just want to help that person find that using the situation they're in at the moment. And it doesn't matter what happened before. We don't need that story because it's an unconscious story most of the time. So it's about knowing that this person does have all the answers within them because they have that power within them and it has all the answers. So it is the omniscient, the omnipresent, etc. And I see that happen so frequently in my coaching sessions. Now, I'm not claiming I can make that happen, but I can be part of it. I can work in conscious cooperation with that process and believe that there is a way for this person to actually wake up. That's finding the answer. It's an awakening. But it's not linear. It isn't linear. You can go into, and that's what I love about all of this work, is it can go from absolute rock bottom, despair, don't like what's happening in my life, to looking back a few months later, go, look what happened. But a lot of our worldly processes like marketing will be, oh, and it takes years and it takes these steps and it takes these processes. And if you don't follow that, you're not going to get there. And it takes time. Well, actually, not always. So if you want transformation and you want to move quickly, and that's why I call myself a high performance coach, is if you want to break through this, come to me. You know, if you're prepared to stand toe to toe, if you're really prepared to just take control in a different way, as in let go of all of that and really see what you need to see, you'll move really quickly. Life will change quickly.
Yeah. And I've only been doing coaching for just less than 2 years. And I've found people starting new jobs has become a little bit of a specialism. So that's because it is that thing of you're walking into uncertainty and you get a certain feeling in your body, very clearly in this case, that we don't like and that we don't know how to deal with. And so there's something there probably about first just embodiment and accepting what's going on. And then you managed in a very powerful way in the coaching to support him in changing that. Yeah. So he managed to change his energy drastically. And I think it usually involves first accepting how you feel and then changing how you feel about it. And then I really like the part as well about taking practical steps to then break it down, to not just leave someone with a great insight and a different energy, and then we know what happens. 2 days pass by, and then we're back to where we were, and it can be even more frustrating. So to break it down into something practical and do something different, straight away, to call someone straight away or to book in a meeting straight away, then sets the wheels in motion to capitalize on that new insight or that new change of state. And I think that's also like great advice, something we can all do to manage those situations just for ourselves, with or without a coach, to say, okay, I'm going to accept this, and then I'm going to change it, and then I'm going to take some quick practical steps to get the ball moving.
Yeah, with that new understanding behind the steps. So he knew exactly why those steps. For someone else, it's pretty obvious. You just call, you're just having a coffee with the manager and you're going to see the new environment. No, this was absolutely reinforcing that he had what it takes and he's okay.
Yeah.
So he could then believe that.
Yeah.
And that would build the next time he's in that situation. He's got evidence, because the brain goes looking for evidence of why we should be worried and evidence of what worked before. And we use that in coaching as well, tell me about a time when it did work for you. What did you do then? We immediately look back at what happened in the past that we can learn from and use, right? And so that can really undo us, because if it's when it didn't work and had really good reasons for why we should be worried, and sometimes it might only be one occasion out of an entire lifetime, we won't move forward.
Yeah.
In fact, John DeMartini, who's great on values, he says that we will make a belief out of 3 situations. We'll believe something about a person when they've done it 3 times. And we'll look for, life is like this. So give me the evidence for that. That will have come into play when we've had it happen 3 times, which is really useful too.
So I'm going to go back to a bit of that science versus spirituality. We started this journey today. What I find interesting is, I'm someone who, if I feel a headache coming on or a sore throat or feel a bit chesty, I know what my mind tells me to do. Go ahead, take some medicine. It's proven to alleviate those symptoms. So go help yourself. However, if I'm feeling heavy, clammy, stressed, nervous, concerned, I don't know if there's any particular over-the-counter or prescription medication I could take to kind of resolve that. And just the examples that you shared, Indira, I love them. And I love the enthusiasm, because again, part of what it could just be is simply where does my mind go to when I feel those symptoms? And it's just a matter of kind of almost just releasing it. So whether it's through meditation, whether it's through breathing, whether it's through self-reflection, whether it's through creative visualization, there are these tools and techniques that are obviously not going to harm the body, but will actually help. It'll unlock, it'll unleash, it'll allow you to scream at the top of your lungs, which is something anyone and everyone can do without the need of medication, to actually release whatever's holding them back. And what's amazing about it is, even actually when you did that just now, I felt the energy. I was like, yeah, I actually want to yell out too. I feel phenomenal. And I think that, what I really admire and loved about this conversation today is I really got an opportunity to understand where you each come from and kind of what drives you. And, it's not to say science is wrong, and it's not to say spirituality is wrong. They each have their merits, but it's giving people an opportunity to really understand and almost get a bit of a desire to look into it, to understand it, to see what potential it can have. Because I'm someone who believes in I want to be in a positive state of mind. And Indira, something we spoke about the other day, just high energy, positive emotion, high performance. And that's the state I want to continuously be in. But I'll know that I'll have moments when I'm ill and I'll slip and feel a bit funny and need something to unlock. I am going to kind of just start to wrap us up, but I kind of want to just hand the mic back to each of you and just any kind of final thoughts for today, because I see this as the beginning of a beautiful collaboration, beautiful conversations. And I want more of these examples and ideas to be shared. And I want folks to hear them, whether it's from here or whether it's directly from each of you, but just any thoughts that you guys would like to have as we kind of wrap up for today.
Who's going first? I've got some thoughts. The thing I am really aware of, and I think particularly having gone through the last year, where we have a thing that comes at us that we need to deal with and changes our world, is we need really deep tools to manage things like this. And I saw, particularly amongst a lot of young ones who are living life according to how much they can spend at the weekend and how much time they spend with their friends and how much shopping they can do online and out in the world. Not a lot of introspection in that sense, and not a lot of cultivating self-awareness. And I've also come across those who've loved these conversations as well, and the workshops that I've run for them in masterclasses and things. There's been a real sadness that we're not educated early on. This is not made part of who we are from the time we're born, and yet we are born with it, and we're educated and conditioned out of it. And so I'm actually thinking at the moment of what I can do about that from an educational perspective. But in many ways, I see that as my role as coach as well. And again, Neil, you know, with us doing the 8 elements, they are really simple things to do, but each element is so profound in what it can do. Like even we did energy last week.
Yeah.
You know, my example of this guy needing to find that energy that was truly available to him, and it came flying out. It was there. How can we do that? And I think I assume my judgment is that a lot of people live life in what we call social hypnosis and don't believe that they really have the ability to change much at all, and then get very disgruntled and blame and don't want to take responsibility and generally make other people pretty miserable as well. So I find that this is about self-responsibility in bold, in capitals, you know, and I owe that to the world. I owe that to others. I can't shift anything if I'm not in a state that will allow that energy to be flowing and for others to be attracted to that, and for me to be attracted to that energy as well. I mean, they do say that, you know, the energy of an enlightened being can make up for the negative energy of millions of people. And whether we can truly prove that scientifically or not, I don't know. All I know is that when I am around the Dalai Lama, or I am around a Swami who's really done the work, or I listen to Ken Wilber or another great teacher who is truly doing the work and is speaking from genuine personal experience in a way that's, I guess, they're the expectations I place upon myself. I can't talk about this if I'm not doing the work. I don't have a right, really. I haven't earned the right to speak about it unless I'm speaking from experience. So, and then I just want to share it with everyone because it's absolutely astonishingly wonderful. And where would I be without it? I often ask, I don't so much now, but I used to quite often think, what would my life be without this? How do people live? How do people live? So yes, we've got 8 elements. Yes, we've got all these other tools, and I'm happy to share the toolkit. But to help people build their own, you know, I'm not pretending I've got all the answers. All I can say is I can show you a way. I can show you a path, and please use it to find your own and help others with that. That's evolution for me. Evolution comes from involution. That's how I see it.
I think that's wonderful. So I would like to build on that a little bit, thinking about what's useful to our audience. It might be something, you know, to share some spiritual confidence, to take the first steps, to try something new, and see how that changes whatever it might be, mood, energy state. So to get ideas from these 8 podcasts that you guys are doing, to say, oh yeah, I'm going to try the creative visualization, or I'm going to try meditation, and I'm going to find out for myself how that's working for me. And then Someone might try fasting, or someone might try a new form of exercise or yoga or whatever it might be, and kind of find a thread to pull to make it a personal journey of learning more about oneself, about finding insights about how we interact with the world and how we co-create that experience. I think that's a wonderful journey that can lead to a lot of benefits in whatever area of life that someone is looking for it, whether it's physical health or relationships or professionally. To just start somewhere, try something out, change a little something in life, and just look for the benefits. And coming back to the scientific topic, we have this great belief in the science that other people are doing, and it's so great in many ways. And one way to look at it is maybe that we can have the same confidence is in the science that we are doing in our own lives. And apparently, the Latin root of experiment and experience are the same thing. And for a long part of our human history, science was also a bit more vague and a bit more, just really looking into something rather than having a huge sample size. And I think that's something that I would like to come back to, that the science with an N of 1 is valid. It's worth doing to find out for myself, to try to change something and to see where that takes us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, without wanting to put people off using this word, but that it's the way in to find the magic. We can't make the ahas happen. We know that it just pops up in the shower when we're daydreaming and enjoying the warm shower. Suddenly we have an answer to something. Like for me, and Anil and I've talked about this a lot, really, is that there's somewhere else, something else, the unconscious, but deeper than that source gets to speak. So, I'm all about finding ways in. And the thing is that every little thing we do then has the intention of that behind it. So as you say, you pull a thread, but you're pulling a thread with conscious intention to allow yourself to open up to something even more and elevate your energy to actually be living at a different level of frequency, vibration as well.
See, it's my turn now to pause, because again, like I'm jotting things down here and I'm trying to process and just appreciate what you guys are sharing and saying. I want to start by saying thank you, because I am very excited by this collaboration and these ideas and the opportunity to have the two of you in your beautiful minds and selves with us and sharing what you have. I just want to say, Fred, I love how you mentioned and you started with, the spiritual side and how you explored it. I think that it's really important that people do. And Indira, you've been on that journey since a young age. And for you sharing that with us, I mean, that's amazing. I think it just shows that there's no right or wrong time of your life to actually be open to some of these ideas, some of these concepts. And, it's about discovery. Right? It's about finding ways to nourish yourself, to nourish your mind, to nourish your soul, your body, your spirit. And I think that even just practicing certain things like gratefulness, for those of you that haven't ever done it, give it a try. It's so true what Fred and Indira have said. You feel something different. It's like taking an energy tablet, or it's like taking, ibuprofen. You will feel something that'll suddenly calm you and enlighten you. And I do love how you said, Indira, as well, I've got what it takes, and I use the expression right now with everyone, know you to be you. I think it's really important that we do that additional introspection. We try to find ways to, I love how you said, eradicate that social hypnosis. So again, those two thoughts you each have said: one, evolution from involution, and two, developing that spiritual confidence. You guys have helped me with that today, and I hope others benefit from it as well. So thank you. And I look forward to catching up with you guys separately and then together once again.
Thanks, Anil.
Thank you.
Really, really wonderful. And thanks, Fred. Such a great opportunity to be able to share and talk and learn from each other as well. Thanks for being the conduit to that, Anil.
My pleasure. Hey, like I said, it's a taste of things to come, and great things when great minds get together. So have an amazing afternoon and day, and I look forward to catching up with all of you again soon.
Me too.
Thank you.
Bye, Fred in Zurich.
Ciao, Zurich.